Hey everyone, throwaway account because my main has people who actually know me. I'm a 37-year-old guy, married to Elena, 35, for almost 9 years. Up until a few months ago, I would have told you we were solid. Not fireworks every day solid, but the comfortable kind, shared routines, shared bills, shared quiet evenings. I work as an architectural designer, which means long hours and too much coffee. She volunteers at the local museum and likes to pretend she's living in some artsy European novel. Looking back, I guess the first cracks showed up when she started getting impatient. Snippy. Everything I said apparently had some hidden meaning she needed to decode and argue with. If I said I was tired, it was, why? You don't even do that much. If I worked late, it was, interesting you can stay at work for hours but can't remember to buy milk. It wasn't like her. Or maybe it was, and I was just too buried in my designs and deadlines to notice. Either way, I chalked it up to stress, changing seasons, whatever excuse made it easier to believe things were normal. Turns out things were not normal. So the thing about hindsight? It's a jerk. It shows you all the red flags you casually walked past like you were sightseeing. I started noticing changes in Elena around early spring. And not the normal kind, like a new hobby or haircut. No, this was the, I suddenly have a secret personality, type shift. She started dressing differently when she left the house. Not nicer for me, but nicer for someone. Flowier dresses, low backs, those artsy necklaces that look like she bought them from some wandering philosopher at a street market. She'd say things like, I'm just rediscovering myself, but that rediscovery required lipstick at 10 a.m., and perfume strong enough to follow her home before she even opened the door. Then came the museum volunteering. It used to be a once-a-week thing, but suddenly she was needed almost every day. They're understaffed, she'd say. They need someone reliable. Which is hilarious now, considering how selectively reliable she turned out to be. But the big sign. Her phone became a crime scene. She used to leave it anywhere, charging on the couch, tossed on the counter, sometimes even in the laundry basket. Don't ask, I don't know either. But then she got weirdly possessive. If it buzzed, she was on it like a cat hearing a treat bag. Once, I reached for it because it was vibrating off the table, and she practically dove across the room like I was about to detonate it. She tried to play it off with a laugh. Oh my God, Mark, I thought you were going to spill coffee on it. There was no coffee anywhere near me. And the attitude. She'd snap at me for breathing wrong. I'd ask how her day was and get, do you need a full itinerary or something? If I worked late, she'd act like I planned it just to inconvenience her. If I came home early, she'd look annoyed, like I interrupted something. At one point, I actually asked if I'd done something wrong. She rolled her eyes so hard she nearly saw her own brain and said, why do you always make everything about you? That one stung more than I want to admit. I tried to tell myself she was just going through something. Maybe burnout. Maybe boredom. Maybe one of those existential, where is my life going, spirals people get in their mid-30s. But even then, something felt off. Like she was somewhere else mentally, somewhere I didn't have access to. Somewhere I wasn't invited. And the worst part? I kept blaming myself instead of listening to the alarm bells screaming in the background. Alright, so here's where things start getting weird in that, if this were a movie, the audience would be yelling at me, kind of way. One Saturday morning, Elena tells me she's heading out early because the museum is doing a special inventory review. I didn't question it at first, I mean, who am I to argue with ancient pottery emergencies? But she left dressed like she was going to a beachside poetry reading, not a dusty artifact cellar. Long skirt, hair actually styled, and that perfume again, the one she only wore on anniversaries or weddings. I joked, big day for the mummies. She shot me this look, sharp and irritated, like my humor personally offended her ancestors. Anyway, she left. I made coffee. Tried to get ahead on some plans I was drafting for work. But after a few hours, I realized something bizarre. She had left her laptop open on the dining table. And here's the thing, Elena never leaves her laptop out. She guards that thing like it contains nuclear launch codes or her childhood diary. At first, I didn't want to touch it. I wasn't trying to be that husband. But then I noticed the screen was still on, and a notification kept popping up, messages from someone saved as A.M. Now, maybe I'm naive, but my first thought wasn't cheating. I thought A.M. was a coworker or another volunteer. Maybe they were planning a museum event or something. But the previews of the messages, yeah, those were not work-related. Stuff like, "Counting down until I get to see you again." That smile yesterday, still stuck in my head. "Tell him you're working late. You know he won't question it." My stomach dropped so fast I swear I felt it hit my shoes. Before I could open the thread, the laptop locked itself, like it sensed my rising blood pressure and decided to protect her secrets. I just sat there, staring at my reflection in the black screen, trying to breathe. But it didn't stop there. A little later, I went to grab something from her car, my sunglasses that I had left in the glove compartment. When I opened it, an envelope slid out. Inside were 2 tickets to an art exhibit in the next city. Cool, right? Except the date was last week. And I definitely did not go. On top of that, there was a sketch tucked behind the tickets. A sketch of her. Done in charcoal. And let me tell you, this thing was intimate in the way someone draws when they know the lines of your face because they've memorized them up close. I recognized the signature at the bottom, A.M. Adrian. The museum's new curator. The guy she casually mentioned once or twice, always with this dismissive, "Oh, he's just such a nerd," tone. Classic overcompensating. Classic lying. I sat in her car for 10 minutes, gripping that sketch like a confession letter, feeling my pulse in my teeth. There was no denying what it meant. I knew. I absolutely knew. But unbelievable as it sounds, a part of me still wanted to rationalize it, soften it, make it something less devastating. She probably didn't want to tell me she went to the exhibit without me. She probably let him draw her because she volunteers there, it's normal. She probably saved his number as A.M. because. I don't know, maybe she likes minimalism. Yeah. I was bargaining with reality, trying to make it hurt less. I didn't want the truth. But the truth was already punching its way through every wall I'd built. After finding the sketch and those stupid exhibit tickets, I felt like I was walking around in a fog. You know that feeling when your brain is trying to reject something your eyes already confirmed? That was me, pacing the house like a ghost, trying to figure out my next move. I didn't want to confront her without more proof, not because I doubted what I'd seen, but because I knew Elena. She's the type who can twist any conversation into a pretzel. She could burn the house down, hand you the matches, and somehow convince you lit it. So I waited. Bad move, maybe, but I needed clarity. The clarity came faster, and uglier, than I expected. That evening, she comes home later than she said she would. Way later. Like 10 p.m. She walks in with this floaty smile, the kind you get when someone has been paying way too much attention to you. Her hair was messy, but not wind messy. More like, someone's fingers were there, messy. She kicked off her shoes, humming. She never hums. I tried to play it cool, long inventory day. She froze for a split second, barely noticeable, but enough. Then she said, "Yeah, it was exhausting," with this exaggerated sigh. And immediately followed it with a dig. "You wouldn't understand. You just sit behind your desk all day." I swear I felt my jaw clench so hard I thought a tooth might crack. She went straight to the bathroom, second red flag, because she always greets the dog first, then me. Instead, she locked the door, third red flag, and took a shower that lasted long enough to irrigate a cornfield. When she came out, she smelled like her museum perfume again. Freshly applied. Trying to get ahead of something, maybe. While she was brushing her hair, her phone, charging on the dresser, lit up. Another message from A.M., preview only, but enough to make my heart stutter. You forgot your scarf in my car. Guess I'll keep it until next time, winking face. My wife doesn't wear scarves. I bought her a whole drawer of them over the years, and she never touches them. Suddenly she has a scarf. One she forgot, in his car. I picked up the phone. I didn't unlock it, just held it. And when she saw me holding it, her whole face changed, like a mask slipping. She snapped, "Why are you touching my phone? You know that's an invasion of privacy." I stayed calm. Too calm. "Elena, who's A.M.?" She sputtered. Actually sputtered. Then glared and said, "Just a coworker." God, Mark, don't be paranoid. Coworker who keeps things you forget in his car. He's being friendly. You always assume the worst because you're insecure. There it was. The classic cheater's script. I didn't respond, so she doubled down. If you paid half as much attention to me as you do to your stupid blueprints, maybe I wouldn't need friends. Friends who draw intimate pictures of you. Her eyes widened, only for a second, then she recovered. Oh my God, you went through my things. That sketch was for a project. Stop being dramatic. It was the worst lie I'd ever heard. She couldn't even make it sound convincing. Her voice went icy. You're making things up because you want to believe I'm the villain. And honestly, in that moment, with her glaring at me like I had ruined her night, something inside me cracked. Not loudly. Not violently. More like a quiet splintering I knew I couldn't undo. Because standing there, listening to her lie so effortlessly, watching her twist the story like it was second nature, I realized I wasn't just losing her. I had already lost her. After that argument in the bedroom, Elena stormed downstairs like I had personally ruined her entire existence. I stayed upstairs for a minute, trying to steady my breathing. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from this awful combination of betrayal and adrenaline. When I finally headed down, she was in the kitchen, aggressively pouring herself a glass of wine like she was trying to drown the situation before it could grow legs. She didn't look at me when she said, "I am not having this conversation again tonight." Again. She was acting like I'd been interrogating her for weeks instead of just learning, hours ago, that my wife was probably sleeping with someone who drew her like one of his museum murals. I leaned against the counter, keeping my voice even. "Elena, I saw the messages." She took the longest, slowest sip of wine imaginable, then slammed the glass down. "You saw previews, Mark. Previews. You're going to blow up our marriage over a couple words on a lock screen?" I almost laughed at how ridiculous she sounded. But then, because apparently the night wasn't unhinged enough, her phone buzzed again. And she lunged for it. Actually lunged. Like a wide receiver catching a winning touchdown. She stuffed it into her robe pocket so fast her glass almost tipped over. That was when I knew I needed actual evidence. No more glimpses, no more half-truths. I needed the full conversation. So I asked, plain and direct, "Let me see your phone." Her head snapped toward me, and the look she gave me could have curdled milk. Absolutely not. Not because I'm hiding anything, but because it's my phone, and I don't owe you access just because you're having a jealous meltdown. I stayed silent. Let her dig her own grave. Then she added, loudly, "If you trusted me, you wouldn't even ask." And there it was. The classic guilt trip. The emotional booby trap. The psychological judo move she was so good at. I didn't raise my voice, but I also didn't back down. "Elena, I trust you to tell the truth. And you aren't." She rolled her eyes, scoffed, crossed her arms, then said the one line that made something in me go cold. You're being pathetic. Pathetic. Not hurt. Not confused. Not, let me explain. Pathetic. She said it like she meant it. Like she'd been thinking it for a while. Like maybe Adrian had even agreed with her. And then, because the universe apparently wanted to put my sanity on hard mode, a knock came at the front door. Both of us froze. She went pale. I asked, expecting someone. She stuttered, and no, of course not. But the panic in her eyes told me she absolutely was. She rushed past me so quickly she nearly tripped, and when she opened the door, she squeezed herself through the crack like she was trying to block me from seeing. I couldn't make out the voice, but I could hear a man. Soft, low, careful. Familiar. She hissed, "You weren't supposed to come here," in this frantic whisper she clearly hoped I wouldn't catch. But I did. Every syllable. I took 2 steps forward, and the door suddenly slammed shut. She spun around, forced a laugh, and said, "It was just a neighbor asking about recycling." At 10:30 p.m. On a Saturday. With a man's voice. I just stared at her. And in that long silence, she finally broke, her facade cracking just enough for the truth to leak through. "Fine," she snapped. "You're obviously going to assume the worst no matter what I say. So go ahead. Believe whatever makes you feel righteous." She stormed past me again, up the stairs, slamming the bedroom door so hard a picture frame fell off the hallway wall. Meanwhile, I stood in the entryway, staring at the door she blocked so frantically, wondering if I should open it. Wondering if he was still standing on the other side. Wondering if I even wanted the answer anymore. I didn't sleep that night. Not even for a minute. Elena stayed locked in the bedroom, and I ended up on the couch, staring at the ceiling while replaying every moment from the past few months like a deranged detective. Every late night. Every inventory review. Every time she snapped at me for no reason. Eventually, around 3 a.m., I sat up with this sudden clarity. I needed to know, really know, what I was dealing with. No more half-answers or lies polished to sound like misunderstandings. I wanted the truth, even if it ripped me open. So I did something I never imagined I'd do in my marriage. I checked her car. I know, privacy, trust, boundaries. But look, when someone starts acting like a stranger and you've got a breadcrumb trail of half-baked excuses, sometimes you just follow the trail. And man, I found the whole loaf. In the passenger seat footwell, tucked under the seat like someone had shoved it away in a panic, was her scarf, the one Adrian mentioned in his message. Except it wasn't just any scarf. It was a silk scarf with faint smudges of charcoal. The same kind used to draw that sketch. Coincidence? Please. Then in the center console I found a tiny tube of lipstick, a shade she never wears with me, but I recognized it instantly. She wore it during her extra volunteering hours. The cap had a fingerprint smudge that wasn't hers. She keeps her makeup obsessively clean. But the real smoking gun? Her museum volunteer badge. Except instead of her name, someone had scribbled ENM Project Access on the back. And the M wasn't me. I froze. I just sat there with it in my hand, staring at that stupid badge until the sky outside started turning pink. Everything in my chest was tight. My breathing felt wrong. My hands were shaking again. And that's when I realized I wasn't even angry at that moment. I was mourning. Mourning the version of Elena I used to know. Mourning the version of myself who thought my marriage was safe. Mourning all the years I spent believing loyalty was our default setting. When I finally walked back inside, emotionally gutted, Elena was in the kitchen wearing one of her "I'm innocent and fragile" expressions. She had made coffee like nothing happened, like she hadn't practically body-blocked a man from our doorway the night before. She glanced at me and said, in the most dismissive tone imaginable, "Oh. You're up early. You look terrible, by the way. No apology. No explanation. No concern. Just that cold little jab. I didn't respond. I walked past her, straight to the table, and put the items down, the charcoal-stained scarf, the lipstick, the badge, the sketch I had pulled from her glove compartment the night before. She went still. Completely motionless. Then, after a few long seconds, she let out this breathy, exasperated laugh, like I was being ridiculous for presenting her own affair back to her. "Oh my God, Mark," she said, dragging her hand down her face. "You're seriously going through my car now? This is embarrassing. For you. Not for her. For me." She didn't look ashamed. She looked annoyed that I'd ruined her morning routine with physical evidence of her cheating. So I asked, "Are you seeing him?" And she didn't answer. Instead, she grabbed the scarf, rolled it up, and stuffed it into a drawer like it offended her. Then she said, "You know what? I don't have time for this. If you want to spiral, do it on your own time." She walked away. Just turned her back and walked away like the marriage she was actively detonating was an optional chore she didn't feel like doing. That was the moment, right there, when something inside me finally switched. Not snapped. Not exploded. Switched. A quiet, steady voice in my head said, "You're done letting her rewrite reality." And I knew the confrontation that was coming next would be the real one, the one she wouldn't be able to laugh off or lie her way out of. Because now I had everything. And she knew it. The house felt too quiet after Elena walked away. The kind of quiet that makes your ears ring. I stood there staring at the drawer she stuffed the scarf into, hands still on the table, breathing steady but shallow. I wasn't confused anymore. Or scared. Or indecisive. I was done. So I followed her. She was in the hallway, picking up her keys like she planned to escape the conversation entirely. She jumped a little when she realized I was behind her. "Where are you going?" I asked. She didn't even turn around. "Out. I need air. I'm not going to stand here and get emotionally attacked for things you've imagined." Imagined. That word pushed something sharp under my ribs. "Elena, look at me." She finally turned. Slowly. With that expression she always wore when she was gearing up to manipulate the situation, the tight jaw, narrowed eyes, and the dramatic sigh that made her seem exhausted by my existence. So I laid everything out. Calm. Controlled. I know about the messages. I know about the sketch. I know about the art exhibit. I know he was at the door last night. I know you weren't at the museum half the time you said you were. And I know you're lying to me. Repeatedly. For a second, 1 second, her facade cracked. I saw something flicker in her eyes. Guilt? Fear? Maybe just irritation that her plan was falling apart. But then she straightened up and delivered one of the most absurd lines she has ever said. "You're blowing this out of proportion because you feel threatened by my friendships." Friendships. Right. "Elena," I said, "friends don't show up at your house after dark whispering through a half-open door." She crossed her arms, defensive. "He came to drop something off. And you made it weird." "I made it weird," I repeated, trying not to laugh in disbelief. "Yes," she snapped. "You're so paranoid lately. Honestly, it's suffocating. No wonder I need space." That one landed hard. Not because it was true, but because she said it with the confidence of someone who'd rehearsed the line. I kept my voice steady. "Did you sleep with him?" She froze. Her fingers tightened around her keys. Then she said, "I'm not dignifying that with an answer." Which, for the record, is basically the world's least dignified answer. I didn't move. Didn't raise my voice. Didn't get emotional. Instead, I said something simple. Then he can't come here again. And you need to stop seeing him. That's when everything exploded. She threw her keys on the floor and said, "You don't get to control who I talk to. You're not my father. You're not my boss. I'm allowed to have people in my life who actually appreciate me." The way she said, "actually appreciate me," made it pretty obvious who she was talking about. I stepped closer. Not aggressive, just firm. "I'm asking you to respect our marriage." She shot back instantly, "Maybe I would if you acted like you were part of it." That one felt like a punch. But I didn't react. And that seemed to frustrate her even more. She wanted a fight. She wanted the drama. She wanted a scene where she could flip the narrative and cast herself as the emotionally neglected spouse pushed into someone else's arms. So instead of yelling, I said, "Elena, I'm giving you the chance to be honest. Right now. With me. With yourself. With our marriage." She stared at me. A long, cold stare. Calculating. Like she was choosing the version of reality that benefited her most. Then she said, deadpan, "I have nothing to confess." That was the exact moment I knew the marriage, as I understood it, was over. Not because she cheated, that was bad enough, but because she refused to tell the truth even when surrounded by its evidence. Her last lie wasn't even slick or clever. It was empty. And that emptiness hit me harder than anything else she'd done. After Elena hit me with that "I have nothing to confess" line, the house went eerily silent, like the moment between a lightning flash and the thunder that follows. I didn't say anything. Not because I didn't have words, but because she had made it painfully clear none of them would matter. She wasn't going to admit anything. She wasn't going to feel anything. She wasn't going to meet me halfway, or even a quarter of the way. So I turned around and walked into the living room. And that, apparently, was the wrong move. Because Elena followed me, heels clicking like gunshots on the hardwood, voice rising. "Oh, so now you're walking away? That's rich, Mark. Really mature. You don't get to accuse me of things and then just storm off when I don't give you the answer you want." I wasn't storming off. I was holding myself together by threads. She kept going. "You always do this. You shut down and expect me to chase after you and soothe your ego." My ego? The one she'd been stabbing with lies for months. I stayed seated on the couch, staring at nothing, trying to regulate my breathing. But she wasn't done. "God, you're being dramatic. You act like you're some tragic hero in some movie." Then, mid-rant, her phone dinged. Both of us looked at it. She stiffened instantly. I didn't reach for it. Didn't even lean forward. I just looked at her. "Who's that?" I asked quietly. She snatched the phone off the table like it was a live grenade. "None of your business." Then she turned her back and typed quickly, shoulders hunched like she was trying to shield the screen. I didn't need to see the message. I knew who it was. She shoved the phone into her pocket and practically shouted, "I'm going out." I blinked. "Where?" "Anywhere you're not," she snapped, already heading toward the front door. Something in me cracked then, not loudly, not dramatically. More like a hairline fracture that had been spreading for weeks finally reaching its limit. "Elena," I said, standing up, "if you walk out that door to go see him, that's your decision. But don't come back pretending this was just an argument." She froze. Just for a second. Then she turned slowly, giving me the coldest look she had ever given another human being. And she said, "Maybe you should stop acting like you're someone I owe explanations to." That line hit me harder than anything Adrian could have said to me himself. She opened the door and stepped out. But before she could close it, something unexpected happened. It wasn't Adrian standing there. It was our neighbor, Mrs. Kemp, the older woman who lived across the street and always brought us banana bread around Christmas. She looked surprised to see Elena storming out. "Oh, Elena dear. I just saw a man leaving here late last night. I thought maybe." Elena threw her hand up so fast the poor woman flinched. "Not now, Mrs. K." Then Elena darted past her, got into her car, and sped off like she was running from the scene of a crime. Mrs. Kemp turned to me, wide-eyed, and whispered. "Oh dear. I didn't mean to intrude. Is everything all right?" I just said, "No." And for the first time since everything happened, the word felt real. Heavy. Final. Mrs. Kemp put a hand on my arm, just a gentle, grandmotherly touch, and said, "Come by any time if you need someone to talk to, sweetheart." And then she left. The door closed. And suddenly the house felt wrong. Not empty. Just wrong. Like the walls themselves had been listening to every lie, every whispered message, every footstep sneaking out. I sank onto the couch and buried my face in my hands. That was the moment I let myself actually feel it. The betrayal. The humiliation. The grief. The anger. The heartbreak. The slow realization that no matter how this ended, nothing would go back to normal. It wasn't one emotion. It was all of them. Crashing into me at once. A tidal wave I couldn't brace for. And I knew, bone deep, that after tonight, the next step wasn't waiting. I needed to make a decision. But first, I had to survive the feeling of my entire marriage collapsing around me in real time. I must have sat on that couch for hours, staring at the door Elena slammed behind her. The house felt foreign, like I was squatting inside someone else's life. I didn't move. Didn't eat. Didn't turn on the lights when the sun went down. I just sat there, replaying everything. It was almost midnight when I finally stood up. Not because I suddenly felt strong or brave, but because something inside me clicked into place. A quiet thought. You deserve better than this. Not fix it. Not wait for her. Just better. So I grabbed a duffel bag from the closet and started throwing things into it. Not everything, just enough to get by for a few days. Clothes. A toothbrush. My laptop. A few sketchbooks I kept for work. The essentials of a man preparing to evacuate the emotional equivalent of a burning building. As I zipped the bag shut, I heard a car pull into the driveway. Headlights swept across the wall. My heart jumped, some weird, instinctive part of me still hoping she'd walk in with an apology for once instead of another defense. The front door opened. Elena stumbled in. And yes, stumbled. She smelled like wine and someone else's cologne. Her hair was messy again, but not the kind of messy you get from wind, and definitely not the kind you get from stress. She spotted the duffel bag instantly. "Oh my God, you're actually leaving," she said, letting out this drunken scoff. "You're being ridiculous." I kept my voice steady. "I'm giving us space." She laughed, a bitter, mocking sound. "Space? What, so you can run off and pout somewhere? Grow up, Mark." I didn't respond. Silence was the only thing keeping me from saying something destructive. She dropped her purse on the floor, kicked off her shoes, and then pointed at the duffel bag. "Put that down. We're not doing this melodramatic breakup scene. I'm tired. I'm going to bed." Then she tried walking past me, but I stepped in front of her. For the first time all night, she actually seemed startled. "Elena," I said, "I'm leaving for a few days. I need clarity. And I need honesty from you. But I'm not going to keep begging for it." She rolled her eyes. "Oh, please. You think you're the victim here?" I stared at her. "You don't think cheating on your husband makes me the victim?" She froze. And then, in the longest 2 seconds of my life, I watched her face morph through several emotions: panic, annoyance, calculation, before she finally landed on defiance. I never said I cheated. You never said you didn't. Silence. She turned away. Not guilty. Not ashamed. Just, indifferent. And that hurt more than the lies. She muttered, "Whatever. If you want to leave, fine. Maybe that's for the best." I felt something collapse inside me. Because she meant it. Not as a manipulation. Not as a test. She genuinely didn't care whether I stayed. But before I could respond, her phone buzzed again. She snatched it up without hesitation. Her fingers flew over the screen. She thought I wasn't watching. But I saw the preview. "Are you safe? Did he calm down?" From A.M. She tilted the screen away, but it didn't matter. I'd seen enough. Her face flushed, not from guilt, but from fear that she'd lost control of the narrative again. I took a slow breath. "Tell him," I said, "that I'm leaving. And that he can have you." Her head whipped toward me. "You don't get to decide things for me." "I'm not," I said quietly. "I'm deciding things for me." She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. For the first time all night, she looked unsure. Off balance. Like she didn't know which version of the truth to weaponize. I walked past her. Grabbed the doorknob. And in one last desperate attempt at control, she reached out and grabbed my wrist. Her voice cracked, not much, but enough to hear it. "Mark, wait." Not tender. Not apologetic. Just afraid of losing the safety net she always assumed I'd be. I turned back. She looked small. Not physically, emotionally. Like she suddenly realized the man she'd been lying to, gaslighting, diminishing, had limits. "What?" I asked. She swallowed. Hard. "I didn't think you'd actually go." I nodded once. "That's the problem." I gently pulled my wrist away. She let go. And for the first time since this whole thing started, she didn't say a word. I stepped outside. The air felt cold, but clean. I walked to my car with my duffel bag, heart pounding, and realized something strangely comforting. I wasn't running away. I was finally running toward myself. I drove to a small hotel outside town that night. One of those places with dim hallways, a humming vending machine, and a room that smelled like both bleach and loneliness. I sat on the edge of the bed with my duffel bag at my feet and my phone on the nightstand and just breathed. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was standing on shifting sand. The hurt was still there, sharp and hollow, and the anger simmered under it. But there was something else too. Clarity. Elena texted me 3 times that night. First, "Where are you?" Then, "We need to talk." And finally, "You're seriously overreacting." No apology. No ownership. Just control attempts dressed as concern. I didn't answer. The next morning, I called a lawyer. Not because I wanted revenge or because I was acting on impulse, but because the thought of going back into that house, into that marriage built on half-truths and rewritten histories, felt like stepping into a burning building. I spent the next few days staying with my brother. I told him everything. And he said something that hit me harder than all of Elena's lies combined. "Mark, she checked out a long time ago. You're just catching up." And damn, he was right. Because once I wasn't living in her storm anymore, I could finally see it, the months of distance, the dismissive comments, the secretive behavior, the way she looked through me instead of at me. The affair wasn't the beginning. It was the symptom. On the 4th day, Elena finally sent a message that wasn't defensive or dismissive. It just said, "Can we fix this?" And for a moment, my chest twisted. Because part of me, the part that remembered who she used to be, wanted to believe we could. But the part of me that had spent months feeling invisible knew better. So I told her the truth. I'm done. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't poetic. It wasn't angry. Just, done. She sent back one final text. I never meant for it to go this far. And maybe she didn't. Maybe she thought she could juggle both worlds forever, me, the stable husband who kept the lights on and the responsibilities handled, and Adrian, the fantasy escape she could run to when real life felt too ordinary. But intent doesn't undo impact. And lies, no matter how she framed them, were still lies. The resolution. I filed for separation. She didn't fight it. At least, not legally. Emotionally, she tried to spin a narrative to friends and family about me being controlling and paranoid, but once people learned Adrian had been hovering around our house at 10 p.m., her story started falling apart faster than her excuses. I moved out permanently. Found a small apartment near my office. It's not much, but it's mine, and it's quiet in a way that doesn't feel suffocating. Elena moved in with a friend for a while. I heard through the grapevine that things with Adrian fizzled out. Apparently, relationships built on secrecy don't do well once the secrecy is gone. Not my circus anymore. Not my problem. What I learned, and what I'd tell anyone going through this. A lot happens when you're betrayed by someone you trusted. You question everything, your worth, your instincts, your memory, your judgment. But here's what I learned when the dust settled. 1. If your gut tells you something is wrong, it usually is. I ignored every red flag because I thought love meant giving endless benefit of the doubt. It doesn't. Love needs honesty. 2. Cheaters lie even when the truth is staring both of you in the face. They don't confess. They don't tell the whole story. They don't break their own illusion unless forced. Don't wait for the full truth, it never comes in one piece. 3. Staying isn't always strength. Leaving isn't always weakness. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from the version of someone you loved. 4. You don't owe anyone your self-destruction. Not even a spouse. Especially not someone who mistreats your loyalty. 5. Healing isn't immediate, but it's real. And it starts the moment you choose yourself over their chaos. Conclusion. If you're reading this and you're in a similar place, here's my advice. Don't let someone convince you their betrayal is your fault. Don't let manipulation sound like reason. Don't shrink yourself just to fit inside someone else's lies. You deserve someone who chooses you, respects you, and shows up for you, without needing to hide behind whispered messages, extra volunteering, or excuses that change every time you question them. I loved my wife. But I love the person I'm becoming without her more. And that's the real ending.